Let's start. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Good morning to everyone attending. Welcome to another episode or series of our Sejahtera International Day of Eradication of Poverty pre-conference webinar. This is the third series in a few. Today we'll be talking about expanding the humanitarian landscape, uniting NGOs, non-profits, and social enterprise in eradicating poverty. We'll have our CEO, Puan Shirin Sharizad, Dato' Abdul Ghani, to give her opening address. And then we're going to have a keynote from, I think, one of the legendary figures in humanitarian sector in Malaysia. Yang berbahagia Dato' Dr. Hartini Zainuddin, founder of Yayasan Sejahtera. And then we'll sit down and we'll discuss long on topics with regards to the humanitarian landscape with Anita Ahmad, Cik Anita Ahmad, lead of community development from Yayasan Hasanah, and then Cik Muhammad Hafiz Muhammad Amirul, consultant in strategic planning for Mercy Malaysia. And moderating the panel session would be the ever-electrifying Raudah Nazran, Puan Raudah Nazran, CEO and founder of Accelerate Global. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Puan Shirin Sharizad to present her opening remarks. Floor is yours, Puan.
Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's a bright morning out there. I hope the sun is shining where you are as well. Alhamdulillah, we're all convening on, a high note, inshallah, and we hope the whole session will, get us to think, get us to collaborate, and get us to do something meaningful together. The topic is so timely with the current state that we're in. I think people are anxious. People need to know, to hear, what at least the social sector is doing. And we've put together this really amazing bunch of people. This panel is, like Pao says, including Raudah, is electrifying. So I am very excited to hear Dr. Hartini as well as the panel. So a little bit about Yayasan Sejahtera for those of you who have just joined in our third series, like what Fazul Pao has said. And I'll just take a couple of minutes to just take you through, an introduction on Yayasan Sejahtera, the work that we are doing and continue to do, and some of the things that we are planning, to roll out in the next couple of months, and really looking into the future. Pao, do I have slides, or would you like me to just talk? Okay, the slides are here. Thank you. So Yayasan Sejahtera was set up in 2009, and the main premise was actually to look at low-income communities. How do we develop an initiative that brings together the corporate sector as well as the NGOs, and really looking at delivering impact and delivering meaningful programs to people in the lower income group. So far we've reached, these are the numbers, these are the high level outcomes that we have achieved. Our main mandate is to look at income generating, to increase economic sustainability for the communities, and really to bring them out from this cycle of poverty, and have a graduation of them moving from low income and having more access to goods and services. Next slide, please. So here's the model. This is the strata graduation model, and something that we've developed over the years. We started with a very simple model. Now, after close to 12 years, we are looking at a more holistic approach, and the building blocks towards really creating a just and inclusive society. So we look at various aspects of the community that we work with. First of all, to see whether there's equitable access to services, equitable access to infra. Some places in Malaysia still can't have access to water. Electricity is a luxury. So those are the kind of things that we look at in terms of the the condition that the community face. We don't do all of it, but we work in partnership with various agencies, government, different organizations who can actually pull together these services. So after they've gotten, access to water, things are a bit more stable, health and shelter is secured, then we look at really securing that. That means it's not just a one-off. They don't just get water today and then the next few weeks they don't have water. How do we secure? So that's the next stage of the kind of program design that we have. The third is where we have done, significantly well, alhamdulillah, together with our partners, is actually then bringing the community to be productive, empowered. They have the dignity to control their destiny. It's not us just giving stuff. It's us working together with the community to ensure that they are sustainable, to ensure that we can all, bring them together, share and benefit from more choices and more access to other things. So healthcare, insurance, various other things that maybe for us, we take it for granted. But for the communities that we work with, there's a lot of, things that we can do for them, with them, so that then at the end of the day, we're all in this, society that's inclusive, that empathize with the situation that other Malaysians are in, and really work together towards a meaningful solution. Next, Haris, please. Thank you. Just very quickly. So some of the programs and some of the projects that we've done, the impact that we've created in securing the basic need, and then productive and empowered community. So that's number 2 and 3 in terms of that, the graduation that you saw earlier. Next, please. So with the COVID and all that, we're looking at migrating them into using the online medium. We deliver our training, our programs through, online Zoom and all that, and really looking at how we help them to get connected to various supply chains. This is our Kembali Sejahtera campaign. A lot of it is being executed now. We thank our donors who've come on board in a very big way to support us and to support the kind of work that we do. Next, please. Also access to devices and connectivity, because as you know, during the lockdown, and we continue to have classes online. So the families of this community, the young ones who are in school, were affected. So our donors came together and helped us to deliver these services. It's not just about the device and the connectivity, it's also about the content. So we're looking to work with other partners. Shanas is in the call somewhere. Shanas is from IDEP, providing content for schools, school-based programs. So we look at content as well. So besides the classes that they dial up to, there are other types of content that then can support them in terms of greater understanding and appreciation of the topic. Next, please. Live campaigns where we're ongoing, having contributions in terms of the funds that will help them with their economic activity, micro enterprises, and some of the activities that we have. People who can sew, people who can cook. Right now, those are the kind of basic activities that is that we are supporting currently due to the pandemic and the movement control. It's been very difficult for us as well to mobilize some of our aid. So we do a lot of this just to ensure that their income is not disrupted. Next, please. Last bit, I think. So here we go. The International Day of Eradication of Poverty, or IDEP for short, is in October. So this year, because all of us were in lockdown, we said, guys, we got to do something. Why don't we engage with different stakeholders? Why don't we host, roundtables, conversations with different actors that will help us? So in the first session, we had, technology and technology and science. We had people who came in and gave us ideas about how to use technology in a very effective way in delivering aid. The second session we had on education, access to education. So that's a basic need. That's level 1 of our model. And today we're talking about how do we expand the humanitarian support with donors, with other NGO sectors and all that. So we've got a whole series of these webinars. We're hosting them on Saturday mornings. And, we really invite all of you who are here today, and also, more people to come in to share with us your perspectives as well, because it helps Yayasan Sejahtera to think through some of our solution, and of course, connect with our very important stakeholders. The main event will be in October. We'll have, we've invited, speakers from various sectors who will then, share obviously their perspectives. And we're collaborating with World Bank and the United Nations to bring in some perspectives regionally, globally as well. So that's going to be a very good session. That's on the 15th of October. Please tune in to our Facebook and our updates. We'll share with you as we go along in terms of, the speakers and the content. So that is the end of my session. Thank you for listening, everyone. And I hand over the session to Fauzul or Pau, and I'm so excited to listen to our panelists and of course, Dr. Hartini today. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Puan Shireen, for the opening remarks. Before we proceed on, I'd like to share with you the schedule of our pre-conference webinars. If Haris could, yeah, thank you, Haris. So today we'll be talking about expanding the humanitarian sector ecosystem, and within the next 2 weeks, there'll be a Merdeka special from us where we'll talk about youth empowerment in nation building and eradication of poverty. We're working on very special lineup of guests for all of you, so hope you can tune in on the 28th of August 2021. And then in September and October, we'll have another 3 pre-conference webinars with the titles as shared on the screen. All right, so enough of that. Now let's not waste time and proceed to the ever smiling, ever exciting figure of Dr. Hartini, somebody very well known in the humanitarian landscape. Dr. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me here today, Yayasan Sejahtera. It is such an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to the panel discussion because we've got some of the most amazing lineup. You've got some of the most amazing lineup, and it's always easy to speak to all of you because we're all on the same page. It's just a matter of how fast or how quickly can we get there in terms of coming up with solutions. So just in a nutshell, really quickly, I'm better known as a child activist and the co-founder for Yayasan Chowkit, which is an organization in Chowkit looking at upholding the rights of children and providing services to ensure that children have basic needs met. However, since the pandemic started and we went into lockdown in March of last year, I've also had the dubious honor of having to work with, like many others here today, having to work on providing emergency food relief to so many communities and also addressing other issues that did not come up during the work that we've done in Malaysia prior to March of 2020. And I'd like to actually come here hat in hand, hoping that we can find solutions as a group rather than trying to solve issues as an individual or as an organization, because those days of working in silos are over. It cannot happen. So just in a nutshell, again, the work that we did with children in the communities in some of the most marginalized areas in around KL, and also looking at work that we've done throughout Malaysia and issues that affect, that are global. We looked at access to education, etc. and stuff. And of course, yes, we had issues with maybe 1 or 2 families, perhaps a month, who need help with, paying the rent or ensuring or, addressing the issue on domestic violence or addressing the issue on having no jobs. But what the pandemic has showed us is that it's highlighted, and we know this, the divide between the have and have-nots, and that the assumptions we make about those in need has changed. because so many have lost their jobs. So many communities have been affected. And for me, because my issue and my area of interest is children, so many children have been affected in so many ways that we never even realized. If we can just show that photo really quickly that I sent this morning, is it possible to just show that slide? And there's a reason for it. Okay, so this photo isn't for dramatic effect, although it is rather dramatic. It's a photo of a grandmother whose grandchild texted me last night. They live in Sampurna. The grandmother sells vegetables by the side of the street, something that all of us have seen and walked past every day. You know, this is not an unusual photo. But what was unusual was the fact that I actually know the name of this woman. I actually spent time with the family early this morning explaining why I wanted to use the photo and for what reason, and getting permission from the grandchild, who's only 15, to be able to present this to you to sort of drive my point home. The reason why she's sleeping on the floor is because she had a headache. And the grandchild had asked me for money to buy a chair, so that the grandmother wouldn't have to sit on the floor and try to sell vegetables every day because her back hurt and she was getting bad headaches. That was one. Of course, the other reason why she wanted me to help was, of course, because the family cannot sell all the vegetables every day. And because now they've gone into lockdown, she's lost that source of income. So it's a multiple effect in terms of what the needs of people are, and people that we walk by, we don't think about the simple needs that we can help, and how we help in order to ensure that they can have some semblance of dignity and some semblance of respite from the daily toilings of just trying to eke out a living. We are in Malaysia right now with many of the marginalized groups talking about survival. We're not even talking about trying to ensure that a community has the tools to thrive. We're talking about providing basic needs to so many to survive. And that asking money, 40 ringgit for a chair, 38.50, so she could have a chair to sit on when she can go back to selling vegetables on the side of the pathway, is something that you think is doable. But she has not been able to get aid to buy this chair, right? Because she's lost the income. So it's so, for me, I think, you know, we can take that slide off, because I did ask permission. So for me, it's not a matter of just addressing one part of the equation. It's not just about feeding the poor. It is about ensuring that they have dignity. It is about understanding the needs. It is about listening to the stories, and it's about humanizing these voices and these people. That lady's name was Sarima, without the H. I gave the money to buy the chair, $38.50, so she could buy the chair. But of course, the shop is closed, so, you know, and she's not working yet, so she'll have to wait, but we'll get that chair for her. But there are hundreds and thousands of people in situations where the needs are things we don't think about because we're not in their shoes. So many times, I think, you know, we talk about, in the work that we do, talking about working with children, we're told to listen. You know, I'm an acumen fellow. One of the big principles we talk is we're told to listen. But really, how many of us listen? We already have presumed, assumed, and already have had a plan in our head. When we meet these individuals, when you hear the stories, we tend to, because it's efficient, because it's simple and it cuts time, already have a one-size-fits-all plan for every single individual that we meet. Whereas we know, and this was the point that was driven home to me when this story came out last night, that everybody has different needs, and that we need to somehow ensure that even if we don't meet individual needs, we meet community needs, and that one community is very different from the other. When we talk to the government and we say, please help everyone, they say not non-Malaysians, right? That's the number one story. We don't have enough. We don't have enough for non-Malaysians, only Malaysians. I get that policy, but please remember that when you work in the communities that we work with, when you work with the groups that we work with, nobody lives in silos. There is no camp out there for refugees alone. There is no camp out there for stateless and undocumented people. Undocumented people, stateless people, refugee people work and live side by side with Malaysians. So when you go in and you give one and you don't give the other, it's divisive. When you give one and you don't give the other, you're not practicing humanitarian efforts. You're not practicing the principle of inclusivity. You're not practicing the principle of upholding dignity. You are being divisive. You are discriminating and you are choosing, which is so absolutely fundamentally wrong in many of the work that I see out there. We are small NGOs. I mean, I represent small NGOs. Yes, I work now as a consultant for a big, huge NGO, but I am at heart a small NGO person with small NGO ideas. But together, I do believe this, that if we work together, if we collaborate, if we share resources, it doesn't mean data. Let's not talk about data. If we share resources, we share ideas, we can solve issues. It is, the government cannot do it all. We know this, so stop asking us. We have to stop saying the government's going to help us. The government's not going to help us. They cannot do it all. They haven't done it right. And honestly, they haven't changed their approach and ideas to many of the things, which is why I am happy that the government understands this now and is looking at ways to be more inclusive in practice as well, to get people and stakeholders that they have not engaged with in the past to come in and try to address the issues. So pre-COVID, yes, our focus was child protection, child services. Post-COVID, it's not about there anymore because we have to help entire communities. If you want to help children, you have to help their families. If you want to help the families, you have to work with the communities. If you want to work with the communities, you have to listen. You have to listen, you have to address their needs, and you have to have empathy. We know that everybody, it's a race against time. We know it's about efficiency. We know it's about getting things done and doing it quickly, because you know what? We need to move on to the next community. But if you don't get it right, and we haven't got it right so many times, it's going to come back and bite us in the butt, simply because we got the foundations all wrong. We talk so much about getting to the root cause, but how many of us actually made time to actually address the root causes? I think, if you did a SWOT analysis on what we need to do, whether it's looking at food security or looking at child protection or looking at domestic violence or, addressing access to education, etc. Please, let's step back. We need to step back, do a SWOT analysis. We really need to spend time doing that and actually understand. SWOT analysis, also I take that back. SWOT analysis is the typical assessment tool for me. Now I'm a SOAR analysis person, right? So we look at, strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results, because it is a more positive way of including stakeholders. It allows us to understand the picture that we cannot work in silos. So please throw your SWOT analysis out the table. That's for organization, internal. But if you want to include stakeholders and you want to do collaboration, I suggest you use SOAR analysis for that, because you can do a lot more. And because it's more positive. And our country right now needs a lot more positivity and hope. And the best way to provide hope for a lot of these communities who are barely hanging on, the individual who's barely hanging on, is hope. And they need to know that we are going to keep our promises, as small as it can, as small as it is, and that we're going to keep the promises. So when I say, makcik saya akan bagi duit kejap lagi, bako makan akan datang. Akan datang means today, not 5 days down the road. These are not CSR exercises anymore. This is emergency. When that person has the courage to step forward and ask someone for help, an outsider for help, I promise you, they have already thought about it days in advance, and they're already hungry, and they're already in trouble. So please have the decency and understanding to know that they have taken a lot of their dignity to swallow their pride to come step forward and ask you for help. I think in terms of strategies, implementation of what we've had to do, for Yayasan Sejahtera, for example, we've had to pivot so many things. Education has to be online, access to health services. We can't go anymore to pay hospital bills. at hospitals. It's about the relationships that we build. You know, it's about making, you know, it's a whole new strategy in terms of how we do things, right? So we can't go to hospitals anymore to pay. So we need to make friends with the hospital administration to see if we can do it online, or, you know, see if we can send a check, send a Grab car. You know, we're doing finding a lot of innovative ways to still provide the services that we used to provide before. But we've just had to be a little more tech savvy, which I'm not. I just learned how to use the screen thing now. And we've had to talk to people that we don't usually talk to. You know, I'm sorry, when we go to the hospital, we just pay the bill. We don't make friends with the hospital admin. Now we have to make friends with the hospital administrators, right? Now we have to make friends with the surgeons. Now we have to make friends, you know, with a whole different set of networks and stakeholders that we never did before. If before I used to avoid working with religious bodies, now I'm actually working with the religious body, talking to Yapin, we're talking to Zakat, we're talking to all these different people because they get it and they also want the same thing. And I think as long as we're aligned and we have the same values and principles on how we do things, we can do a lot more. So I think that's one of the biggest strategies that we've implemented, having to include different stakeholders, having to look at risk assessments and do needs assessments, having to step back, see the picture and see for it, having to listen, having to find ways to, you know, 10 WhatsApp chat groups for health services, you know, having to mind map a million and one things, which I'm fine with because I love mind mapping, having to sit and listen and not make assumptions and think that we know everything, because honestly, we don't know everything. And it's the most humbling experience when you think you know how to address issues like, yeah, I know what to do. And then it doesn't work. But it doesn't work because we didn't listen. And there goes your time and resources. And also the most important thing, I think, in having worked in the last 18 months, and I can't stress this enough, the most important thing isn't funding. The most important thing is people and communication and sharing resources and empathy and understanding where that person is from, or at least trying to make semblance of it. If someone doesn't want salt and garam in their food basket, don't give them salt. What's wrong? If this is one of my pet peeves, which I am guilty as well. Someone makes 100 ringgit food basket, we give 100 food basket, but the family has 4 people in that family. But the same food basket, we give 100 ringgit worth of thing, we give the same family basket to a family of 14. Then we get angry when they come back in 5 days and say, makanan dah habis. You cannot give the same basket to a family of 4 as you do to a family of 14. You didn't listen and you didn't watch. We can train volunteers on the ground to be able to go out and do, like I said, needs assessment and being able to do. But listen, that for me is the most obvious case of not listening and the one size fit all and what's efficient and best for you. It's not about what's best for the kampung, right? Or the family. I think the other thing that we need to do and understand is that for us, and I'm speaking from a child rights perspective, so many of the children are in trouble, so many. And we're not talking about domestic violence or incest or mental health issues and stuff, or access to education. I can see my kids, and we're middle-class families, slipping because you know what? They don't have to wake up at 7:30 in the morning anymore. You know, they can wake up when up. They don't have to go back to bed, you know, till later because you know what? There's no school, or school is at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. There is no socializing. There is no running around in the garden. If you're under 12, you're not allowed. You're not supposed to go out. We don't know what the SOPs are. We don't know. And these kids have been in and out of schools like this for 18 months. That's one. In terms of access to education, I talked about nutrition and the fact that the child who was born in March of 2020 is now 18 months old, eating bubur and nasi for the last 18 months. Where is the nutrition? Where is the understanding what the needs are? Where is the early childhood education for the 3-year-old who is now 5? None of that is there, right? We talk about sick people. Ambulances in hospitals, sick people, poor people can't go to hospitals. If you're stateless, you're definitely not going to have the money to be able to go to private or government hospitals because they're full. So you'll most probably die at home if you're critically ill. And if you happen to be a critically ill child, you better know the doctors or another way in because you're not getting in through the normal channels, right? So that's why I say networking is important. Pregnant mothers, getting blood tests. They don't have money for transportation. Buses cost 5 ringgit, 3 buses later, maybe they can go to the hospital in Kajang, right? They're not going to have the 50 ringgit to take that Grab to the hospitals. So we need to think of ways to pool the funds together, whether we set up a community chest or something, to address these issues. Vaccination of migrants, for example, right now, you ask someone to go to Bukit Dalil where it's happening. Someone is in Kajang, someone is in Shah Alam. How are they going? They're not going to get there in time. People were queuing at 4:30 in the morning for 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock appointment. We need to have a little more compassion, and we need to have a little more common sense. That's all I'm saying. I'm a quote person. So these are my, when I was thinking about what to say today, I was thinking of this quote, and it's so simple, right? So one person can make a difference, but everyone should try. But everyone should try and do it intelligently. We talk about emotional intelligence, which means you have to use your heart and head. I tend to be more heart than head, but together with all of you, I'm sure I could do a much better job at helping a lot more people and doing so compassionately and intelligently. So my ask for today, if there's any one major takeaway, is that we need to be kind, and we need to be kind collectively, and we need to be compassionate collectively, and we need to ensure that whoever we help doesn't have to lose more dignity than they have, because it takes a lot for someone to ask someone for help, yeah? And it takes a lot to say, I cannot take care of my family and help you, because Malaysians are proud, and it doesn't mind like anybody's proud. So for me, that's what we need to do. Every person, every child, every teen, every youth can make a difference. And you don't have to be extraordinary in this difficult time. You just have to try. And together we can do extraordinary things together. So thank you very much. That's all. I tend to ramble. I actually stopped myself from rambling, and I'm looking forward to the panel discussion. Thank you so much again for allowing me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Hartini, for that very thoughtful and very deep keynote. I think we agree with all of your points, especially at Yayasan Sejahtera, where one of our main pillars is collaboration and partnership. We are always looking for different partners out there to help us think of new ideas, to share resources, and to work together, basically, and deliver help to all the people in need as much as possible, not discriminating and not choosing who gets help and who doesn't. So there's a question actually for you, Dr. Hartini, from Surina Ali.
Yeah.
Perhaps you would like to answer that in the Q&A box?
Sure, I'll do that.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so before we move on to the panel session, there's a video that we would like to present to everyone. Haris, could you please play the video? Or Shah?
Maybe Fauzul, if the video is not forthcoming,
yep,
we can do it at the end of the session.
Okay.
And let the team. Oh, okay, it's here.
Okay,
sorry, Karen.
Right. Thank you for the video. Yeah, the video is basically to persuade and encourage all of us to share a little, give a little, and you can do that by visiting our website www.sejahtera.my, and all of the links for donation will be there. You can't miss it. All right. So
Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt, or all
sure.
the partners who are on this call, because we work together, right? So it's about everyone. It's about all the organizations here present and every individual that's listening in. So we are the convener, if we can use that kind of word. So we bring people together, but really the help and the support is welcome for everyone in this call. Whoever who can participate will be most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carry on. Oh, yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the panel session. I bet everyone can't wait to hear from the amazing lineup of panel members. So for that, I would like to hand over to our moderator, Puan Raudah Nazran. Dipersilakan.
Thank you so very much. Well, can all of you hear me clearly? Just checking first.
Yep, clear with me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Pao. I have goosebumps actually after watching the videos, after listening to Dr. Tini, obviously, it's definitely trying times. But when I was watching the video of Yayasan Sejahtera, a quote really struck to me, and that was, "We are Malaysian and we have the capacity to love and to care for everyone." I think that is really, really hopeful. And in times that are, as such, we really do need such hope. And I really do believe that we as Malaysians, we are capable to spread love, hope, and actually to care. A very good morning, everyone. So to those of you who attended the previous two webinars, welcome again. And yes, we meet again. I'm here again as the moderator. To those of you who are relatively new, perhaps a brief introduction about me so we can get comfortable, so you guys can ask questions despite the hefty topic. My name is Raudah Nazran. I am 25 years old and I'm the CEO and founder of Accelerate Global. It is a social enterprise aimed at tackling youth unemployment issues, and we run upskilling programs, developing youths into becoming entrepreneurs of their own. But today it's not about me, right? Today, essentially, we will be unraveling the topic at hand, which is essentially expanding the humanitarian landscape and uniting NGOs, nonprofits, and social enterprises. Now, this topic today, I believe, is really vital, just as Puan Shireen has already highlighted, because it has a really strong linkage to the situation that we are all in right now. COVID-19 has indeed changed the landscape of humanitarian work so far as the implementation of policies and the execution of aid, assistance, and reliefs as well. With us here today are four incredible panelists, of whom two of them Pao has already introduced, Puan Shireen, Dr. Hartini. We also have two more with us here today, Puan Anita Ahmad, there she is, Yayasan Hasana's Head of Community Development, and Encik Hafiz Muhammad Amirul Mercy, Malaysia's Strategic Planning Consultant. Welcome, panelists. Now, I'd like to kick off our panel session today by actually complementing what was highlighted by Dr. Hartini in her keynote speech about COVID-19 and the increase in demand for immediate rollout for assistance and the difference in the beneficiaries' needs, the importance of actually listening and the importance of actually understanding what exactly are the needs of the people on the ground. And for that, I actually would like to kick off with a question for Puan Anita. Essentially, before, and of course before, pre, and now during COVID-19, do you see perhaps any major differences in trends in terms of the level of requested assistance or support by the public from the humanitarian sector? And if there are differences essentially in the types of assistance required, how exactly is Yayasan Hasana essentially executing it, and how exactly are you rolling out the said assistance?
Yeah, thank you very much, Raudah, for that question. Just quickly, just in case the audience don't know, I work for Yayasan Hasana. It's a foundation under Khazanah Nasional Berhad. We've been around for the past 6 years, and our role really is, firstly, as a donor, but we also convene and we also try to influence through advocacy. But yeah, so we have seen a big difference, of course, since last year and this year. So normally, particularly where humanitarian sector is concerned, so we do different things. We do both short-term support as well as long-term support. Our short-term support, normally is towards the end of the year for response during the floods. But last year, and normally we're processing maybe about 5 requests. Last year we went up to 100. Requests already, and this year also is the middle of the year. We are seeing already about 40 to 50 requests. Now, what's the difference between last year and this year in terms of the trends of requests is that largely, and we intended it to be that way, is that more community-based organizations are applying. And be ensured to tell people that this is not, to be very honest, before Hasanah was known to be an Atas Foundation, we have worked very hard to not be known that way, because that way, and one of the ways was to make sure that our forms are easier. And this is for humanitarian. We have different types of grants, of course, which get more deep and more complex depending on the funds. But we made sure it's simple. We made sure that also that we can call up and speak to people. So a lot of Persatuan Penduduk actually came to us, and we like to see that rather than, of course, we also support the larger organizations like my colleague here from Muslim Malaysia. But by reaching out to the grassroots level, then we want to hear from them what their needs are a little bit more directly. I believe we can do better, but at least we've done that. That's one. And also in terms of what Tini was saying in terms of the food aid, yeah, a lot of times what we saw was dry food. So we said that, can you please balance it out? So we have actually, as a donor, also said, and we've seen at least some balance of protein, like at least there's eggs now, chicken. So those ones, we'll no hesitation, we'll say immediately yes. But the ones that we see are dry food, then we like, can you, we actually have a conversation with them and try to encourage that they look at it differently. And we never say no to requests like things like Pampers. We had one for strokes patients. So as donor, we have seen more of those requests. But I also like to add that, thankfully, the Ministry of Finance also recognized the important role of NGOs. So they've been collaborating with us. They gave us quite a large allocation, and we've done what we call a medium-term kind of livelihood kind of programs. But within that, what's been different from our previous grants is that we made sure that a lot of that money also went to pay for people to do the work. So quite often, when we hire NGOs, of course, money goes to NGOs, but it's a cost there. But what about using some of that as cash for work? So we managed to do that as well. So that's a change also in our approach. So for example, we had a project in our RC community where they needed to construct toilets and water access. We ensured with our partner that pay the locals to do that. Don't go and So anything that we saw that was very commercial, we said no. We want you to be able to pay the locals, so that income was coming in. So we try to listen, but because we work through partners, we have to do that. And also it's not looking about too much of the short term, because there are many people doing the food aid. We're quite happy that in the meantime we ensured to also make sure that we are encouraging livelihood as well, and through innovation as well, through our partners, making sure that what are the ways that they can pivot as fast as possible. So we like working with partners who really talk to their beneficiaries and say, okay, you're stuck here, how can you move forward? So yeah, we saw a lot of differences, not only in terms of who applied to us, but also approaches on having to be very innovative and very fast. Like Tini said, we can't wait, right? People are surviving here. It's not about thriving. And just last one that we have been investing more as well is that we're getting a lot more requests for food security, which we never got before. And more applying for urban farming, for food security. And we've even got some that I'd love to talk about a little bit more later on community food banks as well. So yeah, there has been a difference.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Puan. what really caught my attention was actually the livelihood, because it's really important for us to think about, 2 years down the road. Yes, now, we obviously immediate relief is vital because that's how, the beneficiaries can move forward. But I guess the question of what's next is the question that we all have got to think about to ensure that they're not stuck in the vicious cycle of say homelessness, poverty, and so on and so forth. I thought of actually moving to Encik Hafiz. As we are talking about, assistance and humanitarian aids, given that Mercy Malaysia is a non-profit, are there any changes in Hafiz that you are seeing? And perhaps how is Ms. Mercy dealing with this change in terms of rolling out assistance immediately and effectively?
Thank you, Paroda. Hi, everyone. Talking about change, I would like to give some reflection, or personal reflection, which I think the theme of today's discussion is the perfect reflection on what the world and the country is experiencing. and immense pressure that is coming from many pressing problems. COVID-19 is one of it, but also from climate change to food insecurity, from conflict to migration and displacement, from the pandemic to poverty and instability, political instability, and so on, and many others. So we need to address, before we talk about change, we need to acknowledge and address that, to acknowledge that these problems that most of us are facing are transboundary in nature. Yeah, just like what the pandemic COVID-19 is showing to us. The way it reacts is transboundary, and this same goes to the issue of environmental pollution, of natural hazards, of war, crisis, etc., which they all require multilateral solutions, and urgently requiring many actors, just like what Dr. Hatini mentioned just now, many actors and stakeholders to work together, not necessarily to get more funds only, but also to mobilize ideas and talents. Of course, financial support is also important. Other resources, political will. All of these in driving the national, regional, global progress in tackling urgent challenges. So these are the fundamental of changes that I think we should be addressing, rather than looking at micro level of changes which are very dynamic in nature. So and this changing global and national landscape, they force us to ask the simple but yet difficult question, which I think you asked this now, Rhoda. What's next for humanitarian action? So the best that I can think of top of my head at this moment are three main points, I guess. Number one is on understanding and practicing the humanitarian principle, going back to the basic. Number two is on learning from each other, and number three is working together. Nothing new here, but fundamentally important. Yeah. First of all, before we can provide any prescription, which I think is very difficult to do, to answer the question, I think it's important that we need to look back and understand the basic of all, which is the humanitarian imperative, the principle of humanitarian action. There's four of it, which include humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. Betul kan? Takut tertinggal, lupa dah. Yeah, humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. These are fundamental to humanitarian action. Any changes that happen, the dynamics on ground that influence what are required from humanitarian actors, eventually will need to be reflected back within these four principles. Yeah. Considerations regarding how to operate in accordance with these principles are very important, and it will be able to help us to solve the prevailing issues that are affecting us, the humanitarian sector and actors. Yeah. I would like to also put emphasis on the need for a self-reflection among humanitarian actors. Perhaps by being critical to our own self, to our own organization. Have we been operating based on these humanitarian principles in doing what we think is correct, what we think is needed, and what we think is important? So perhaps that needs to be answered first. And this might be the first step in the process of unification of humanitarian actors in the country. Well, secondly, my second point, maybe I can share a bit on what Mercy Malaysia had done and also is doing, so that it can be useful for us to learn from each other. The first example is maybe a story dated back 17 years ago. when Puan Sharin was the Chief Operating Officer of Mercy Malaysia during that phase. This was when Mercy Malaysia responded to the Indian Ocean tsunami in Aceh, Indonesia, and also to other countries as well. Mercy Malaysia was a very young organization, established only 6 years earlier with limited experience in responding to a major disaster of such scale. So the need of the people affected by the disaster was so immense that we were required to improve our way of working. And that experience happens again today when we are responding to COVID-19. Yeah. So while in Aceh, we were forced to work together, we were forced to work in better coordination with government actors, with international NGOs, with local partners, with funders, with media, with local leaders, and most importantly, the grassroots. It was during this time that we mobilized new talents, resources, new streams of funding. We were forced to put in better mechanisms for better reporting, improve our communication internally and externally, to strengthen partnerships with many actors from various sectors, institutionalize accountability frameworks, and work with the grassroots as equal partners. This had never happened at a systemic scale within the organization. Yeah. But that situation forces us. We have no other option on how to operate. It was also during that time that Mercy Malaysia started to expand its humanitarian services to include developmental aid. We were Puritans. We do emergency response. So, but because of the needs, it requires us to expand into doing developmental aid, disaster risk reduction. What else? Supporting the education stream by providing not only physical infrastructure, but also various forms of various platforms of learning and knowledge sharing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Puan Sharin, because you were the CEO back then, so I might lose some details there. Yeah. And also with the amount of funding received from the public 17 years ago, and that again happened again now today during the pandemic. As well as financing facility that was entrusted to us, we realized that we need to institutionalize a stronger accountability mechanism. Thus, Mercy Malaysia became a member of the Humanitarian Accountability Partnership International, HAP International. We were certified in 2007. We became the 3rd NGO in the world and the first in Asia to get the certification. Yeah. So moving forward, fast forward, the second example is on Mercy Malaysia's COVID-19 responses, where we mainly work in the country, but also providing aid to other countries, neighboring countries, yeah? India, Indonesia, Philippines. Yeah. So with the accumulated 21 years experience, Mercy Malaysia is now being run in a more professional and structured setting. And this had allowed us to be prepared in terms of planning holistically and in responding to the global pandemic. So what we did, we quickly drafted, design and implement a dedicated COVID-19 strategic preparedness and response plan on the 20th of March. That's two days after the MCO was announced. That was very quick, and we launched it a few days before the WHO announced it. And more importantly, this was made possible with early preparedness work done. Kalau dah 21 tahun tak prepare, tak tahu nak cakap apa lah kan. So we were more prepared. We did engagement work with Ministry of Health. We have better data and information sharing with partners. We had our staff to do research works and so on, and better strategized partnerships with government and non-government organizations lah. So maybe these are some of the key areas lah on how we deal with these changes. Am I answering your question?
Yes, you are actually. And Jared, if I can interject, I really love when you say it's time to go back to basics. Working together, humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. These things are actually, again, back to basics. But a lot of times we forget. because we tend to take things too, we discuss in a very complex manner that we forget that at the end of the day, the basic is just all of us coming and working together, helping people impartially and putting humanity first. So I'm going to actually take that that point that you made and actually move on to the next part of our conversation today, because when we talk about humanity first, when we talk about impartiality, at the moment, we can't lie that there are actually negative connotations that are happening out there, especially in regards to discrimination towards the marginalized in this pandemic. Just like what Dr. Tini said just now, we're going to have Malaysians. And so, it sort of builds a negative connotation amongst the larger donor in the country, whereby I guess one of the major prevalent issue is that people are not looking to donate for non-Malaysian assistance or non-Malaysian aids. And so I thought of actually posing this question to Dr. Hartini. Given such negative connotation, I believe educating our society is the solution. But how far can we go to educate the society at the moment, especially with the presence of social media, with the presence of so-and-so freedom of speech, and actually people posting hate speeches about the immigrants, and so changing the whole narrative about them, when really and truly, just like you said, they work together with us. When we go to highways, construction workers, those are the people that actually work building the highways, and then people, say that, oh, you guys shouldn't be in our country, then who's going to build the highways in the first place? So perhaps what are the potential root causes to such discrimination, and most importantly, how can this be effectively addressed so we can change the whole narrative in the country?
Well, first of all, I think it's a long process in terms of addressing xenophobia and misinformation, or deliberate misinformation, actually, in a lot of ways for different reasons: political will, voting right, whatever. And I think education comes with time. It's something that, and the narrative has to be worked on over and over again. We have to repeat the same things over and over again. Migrants are human. You can't tell a migrant or refugee from another person most of the time in Malaysia. They're not the enemies. We're all in this together. Nobody can leave. Nobody can come in, except maybe now tourists slowly. But, and we need to help one another. You cannot go to a village or a PPR flats and say, Malaysian, no Malaysian, Malaysian. You can't, but that's what we're doing, right? And it defeats the purpose. If we're talking about national security, let's prioritize what issue amongst national security that we want to address. Is it to ensure that everybody is healthy and safe? If the priority in national security issue is to ensure that everybody is healthy and safe, then we need to vaccinate everyone. You cannot round up people and throw them in detention centers, nor throw them into the sea. Okay, so that's not very realistic, number one. Number two, everybody, refugees, contribute and make a difference, and actually contribute to the economy. Let's not forget that, yeah? Everybody's making a difference. The migrants that you're throwing in detention centers, that you refuse and make them line out for hours outside places to get swab tests and stuff, they built this country. They built those buildings, yeah? And we need to address the root causes of why migrants overstay. We need to address the issues and acknowledge the fact that there are unscrupulous visa workers in agencies who are bringing in these people where it really accounts to, trafficking. And we need to address the issue and understand who a refugee is and why they come. They didn't come here because they thought Malaysia was the land of, beautiful, bountiful, and this thing. They came to Malaysia because their families were here. They're on their way somewhere else, and they want to go and get resettled anywhere else. I promise you, they don't want to get resettled in Malaysia. That's number one. Number two, if we're talking about stateless communities, please remember who they are. They're internally displaced people who were born here for generations and generations. They are, for all intents and purposes, except for the legal part, Malaysians. So let's just remember that. And if you want to help the whole nation, then you have to help everyone in the nation. So that's my bottom line. How do we address this issue? Quite simple. Okay, I acknowledge the fact that the policy says you can't feed non-Malaysians. So you know what we do? We go to the public. We go to the public and we say, dear people, I'm feeding this community in Sabah. This community, I can't tell you what the breakdown is, but I will guarantee that 90% are stateless, 10% are Malaysians, and the Malaysians are fishermen who married, non-Malaysians, right? So this is who I'm feeding. Do you care? Most of the time they say no. I said, okay, great. Let's start a crowdfunding platform. This is where I'm going to get the money to ensure that they feed. Do you believe that feeding people is a basic right? Yes. Okay, we're on the same page. Let's move. So for me, I think a lot of things is acknowledging the fact that there are policies in place that affect, that disallow for anyone to feed Malaysians. Okay, got it. But we're going to say, we're having the crowdfunding platforms. You say you won't help, but you didn't say we can't help. NGOs can't help. So we're going to do it, and we're going to do it by crowdfunding. So the Machi and Pachi out there who gives us 50 ringgit, and that little girl who gives us 10 ringgit a month to feed another asnaf, and she doesn't care if they're Malaysian or not, those are the ones that we're going to go to, and those are the ones we're reaching out. So the narrative is built through examples like this, through people like us, because Malaysians as a whole are really giving people, yeah? They want to help, they want to do it. And honestly, they're not the ones discriminating. It's the narrative that's being passed around and the disinformation that is the loudest. So we need to be louder, we need to be clearer, and we need to stand up and say in ways that are maybe not confrontational all the time, let's feed everyone, let's help everyone. Let's ensure all children go to school. Let's make sure everybody has access to health. And if the policy is no to health services for non-Malaysians, then we raise the money and we do it together. And so far we're okay. But we still need to work with the government. We still cannot circumvent the government. And at the end of the day, it would be much, much better, quicker, faster, and better if we did work with the government and said, okay, let's carve out who does what, as long as we have the whole picture, and let's just go and do our spots, and we'll come back together, convene, and map out and do these things. But please stop asking us for data. We're not going to give you. So that's one of the easiest way to do it.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Can I say one thing though?
Yes, yes.
I do so much consulting work on resource mobilization and fundraising. Resource mobilization comes before fundraising, and there's a reason for it, because the most important resource is us human beings. So it's the experts, it's the context, it's the networking, it's the volunteerism, and it's the time. Funding and money is important, but it comes after resources and resource mobilization.
Agreed, 100%, definitely. The people need to step up. And I think changing the narrative through public crowdfunding actually holds quite the weight, especially again, with social media and things going viral really quickly. And I completely agree with you that we definitely need to be louder than essentially the existing narrative.
And we have to find innovative ways of being able to share accountability. Yep. So it's, sharing your Maybank deposit slips and photos and social media pictures, and that's how you hold and document your work.
Precisely.
So government needs to.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's all. I think I want to focus on actually the crowdfunding that you mentioned. I think sort of just going through the second negative connotation that I wanted to present today, because what seems to be a really controversial topic at the moment is the portion of contribution from either corporates and the public that goes towards the operation expenditure. And in terms of the administration cost, as we know, up until recently, people have been talking about the fact that, if I donate 20 ringgit, perhaps 5 ringgit goes to the administration cost, and then so I don't want to contribute. So my question would be for Puan Shireen, given that Yayasan Sejahtera does essentially, accept donation. And I wanted to ask you 2 questions, actually. Number one is perhaps what contributes to such thinking. When I was reading through, this controversial topic, one of the news outlet, one of the news article that really caught my eye was the fact that direct public crowdfunding that essentially are led by the public, where 100% goes to those in need, may be one of the factors. So essentially debunking the public can do more thinking. So I wanted to ask what's your opinion on this, and how can we educate the donors out there that there are people behind this humanitarian work, and that we too need to be paid.
And as a donor, I'd like to also pitch into that discussion.
Yes, okay, I'll pass it right to you after question.
Sure. I think we've been working on this topic for the longest time. And, you know, bless their heart, the donors want to give what they want to give. But sometimes they don't understand that there are people who are acting on behalf of the donors to deliver those goods and services. But then we are held to a higher account, you know, of reporting, measuring impact, giving, be accountable and all that. But then you don't understand that these people, the people who work in nonprofits, also have bills to pay, also have children to feed. You need to compensate them fairly. In fact, in the social sector, because the work is even more difficult, sometimes we should be compensating our nonprofits at least at par with some of the not the larger corporates, but a market rate, because then you will get good quality people who will join the nonprofits and deliver really good quality work. If you give 100 ringgit, don't expect 100 ringgit to go directly to the beneficiaries. But where the NGOs need to be accountable, the nonprofits need to be accountable, is that be transparent with how you allocate the funds, and have an internal benchmark to say, I will not spend beyond of a certain percentage, and explain to your donor why you need to spend for your staff, for their care, and also, you don't want to be paying your staff lesser, and they are also in the group of B40 that we are trying to assist. So I think donor communities need to understand this, and whether it's a corporate or individual, please understand that it is important for you to also care for people who work in nonprofits. And that's where you're going to drive the quality. That's where you're going to drive the standards, because not everybody can work for free. Not everyone has the means to say, oh, I can give my time and I don't need, a salary. Almost all would need that, but they choose to work in a social sector, and the work is much tougher. You don't have a fancy, nice office with air conditioning to go to every day. You're in the trenches, you're in the grounds, you're working with people. It's tough. So please have the understanding that we need to professionalize our NGOs, and the way to do that is to compensate them well, so that then we can build capacity, build good human resource or talent in the social sector. Why not? Why do we discriminate, right? So I'm very passionate about this topic because I've been fighting this for as long as I can remember.
Of course.
Even in the days of Mercy Malaysia, where it was, oh, just volunteer, just give allowance here, there. I said, no, if you want to sustain the talent, you have to sustain the expertise. Capacity development is so important for non-profit sector.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree with you 100%, because a lot of people, they don't think that it's a job. It's, we're doing it voluntarily, here and there. I think that's a mistake. Right?
Yeah,
I'm going to pass the point, Anita. Sorry, point.
Yeah,
I think
I'm also very passionate about this issue.
Yes, I just have one question for you to add to that.
Sure.
How can organizations then be more transparent? What's the methodology? Is it inviting the donors to AGM, for instance, or is it posting it on their social media? Perhaps you can enlighten us on that.
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say is that I've been in this sector for 20 years. I was only ever a volunteer for 3 weeks. That's it. And then I became a professional from that, or not professional. The first part, so I started with Mercy, and I'm to this day, I was just telling them in the WhatsApp, I'm eternally grateful to Tan Sri Dr. Jamila for having that vision to understand that you need to have paid staff, because it is a professional job. If you are going, in my case, I went to a war zone. If you're going to be throwing somebody in a war zone for months on end, you have to be compensated. You're putting your life, but that's another aspect. But even here, right? So there are many of us who have managed that, but not everybody. And the sector has grown over the years, and more people want to go into the sector. Now, some people are driven by passion. Some people are driven already by professionalism, like people like Shahrin, Hafiz, myself. We've gone through, even of course Dr. Tini, but they are the new batch of people who are coming. So we have that kind of variety of understanding. So what we don't have in the country is like what Hafiz was alluding to, a standard of some kind of practice. We don't have what is what we call the third sector, a non-profit sector. People confuse the word CSOs, NGOs. So we have to get to that point. Hassana has been trying to do that. We have been lobbying for some time. So us ourselves, we commit to, so the way that we do, and this is what donors have got to understand, so, and the way that we calculate when people apply, at least for our grants, is that if it's project implementation, there's a cost to it, and it's not just the aid, it's staff cost. So it's project cost. And on top of that, 10% of that we say you can also put towards organizational development fund. So we've always had it from the very beginning. And why we put it at 10%? No, we had a discussion because something that we don't do as well very well in this country is to hold our standards to international standards. So as soon as we were established, we said, what is the international standards here? Why are we looking even at Malaysia? Because the sector globally is so well established. So there are many ways that, and you know, if you don't want to look at America and all that because you see you can't compare, let's look at India, let's look at Bangladesh. Their professionalization of the third sector is very wide. Now that's number one. My first point is that yes, and we have been lobbying continuously, and we do that, and we show the way by doing it ourselves to some extent. Of course, there are certain challenges there as well. It's not always easy. So the tough part that we have is how do we compare? Why is this one charging more and why is this one less? So we don't have a benchmark. So we need to create that. Secondly, is that it's like what Shani said, what we're trying to do as well is to professionalize it. That's why this kind of webinar is important, to keep talking about it. So we host a lot of talks as well. On top of that, and just to advertise here, we have also are starting to offer a scholarship for courses, for short-term courses that's aligned to the social sector. So all this time, see, when with Mercy Malaysia, because it was so well established, we often, a lot of Mercy staff actually go for a lot of courses, professional courses. People like Shari, myself, Tini, and I do that as well. We go for fellowships. But while we wait for that, Hasana is actually offering that because we realize as well we need to professionalize it, because we get frustrated, when one organization is a different standard to another organization. Number three, that the reason why we need to professionalize this is because we are doing the government's job in some cases. If you're going to send out counselors, you think what? Counselors are free. They spend so much on their studies. And this is not, and when you're talking about social workers, this is actual professionalization that's recognized in other countries. There is a gap in the country for sure. And we are filling up that gap. That's why NGOs are exploding. So all this, would you allow your child to be counseled by somebody who's doing it for free? No way. If you're middle class or upper class, there's no way you'll do that. But you expect to be 40 and the poor to do that. That is hypocrisy. So if you think about that, that's why sometimes when I forget sitting in of course in the foundation, I think to myself, okay, what if it was my child? And I've challenged some board members. Think about it when it's your child. Would you allow the same standard? No. Why would you expect the B40 to have a different standard? So it's and then of course then there's the sustainability of the support. So some NGOs also perpetually depending on others because they themselves, a lot of NGOs also are very top down. So but what we're not looking at is while we think about, because funding funding or resources, whether it's resources in kind, you cannot do it forever for any community. You should not think that. You are not a hero. You're not meant here to be a hero. You're supposed to be a supportive role. There must be an exit plan. When you have an exit plan, you can plan your finances better and your resources. So what Hasana does with his partners is that we are doing a lot, because you know what? The B40, whatever, how you want to label them, migrant, non-migrants, they have so much social capital themselves, but we don't recognize it. We're always saying that, oh, they need help, Yes. But how much are you investing in building their capacity to help others? So for the kind of projects I need for community development, everything has community leadership. Everything has, okay, how do you build the capacity of the communities, including for them to raise funds themselves? So sometimes we give capital so that they learn how to do project management at community level. They understand themselves. And then the NGO can exit and you'll have enough money to go to another community. Ini bertahun-tahun kat situ juga, Then how long? 10 years, 20 years. That's paying for your job. That's not paying for you to actually help the community. So there's that balance as well. So I can go on about this forever, but there are many aspects. You're right, you have to be for professionals, but the professional must remember you're not to be there forever, because we're not here to pay for your salary to be there forever. There must be an exit plan, sustainability plan, and the way to do it is to empower grassroots. So we have done that. So we have created collaborations at the highest level between GLC companies so that we mobilize resources, but we have also at the same time created collaboration at the grassroots. So we did that in one PPR way before, it's like what Hafiz is saying, don't do it at the last minute, it has to be part of your planning. We did a PPR that during the COVID, they were all already empowered to mobilize. They were the ones who identified the beneficiaries. They were the ones, and all the NGOs in that PPR were collaborating. So they're sharing data all the time. And I was like, and we want to replicate that to every community. So we don't have to be everywhere every time. That's all.
Thank you so much, Puan Anita. I just wanted to quickly highlight, there is actually a comment in the chat box from Ms. Shoba Ayar. She said, thank you so much for saying that NGO and humanitarian workers must be paid. I am a professional social worker for the past 30 years. I just discovered the salary I earn all these years, it falls under the B40 category, according to yesterday's Sun's article. I'm rich in experience and skills, but poor in terms of money earned. Yeah, so I think we need more advocates, and definitely we need to keep talking about it and keep talking about it until essentially change is made. Thank you.
Can I also add that I think the Malaysian public, whether they're corporates or individuals, need to also read up, learn up, and understand how the non-profits work and how to understand humanitarian work. Sometimes they hear something, they make it viral, and then all the non-profit sector gets the backlash of it, when actually there's 1,000 more who's doing great work on the ground that you don't hear of. But then, because of one bad apple, and everybody gets affected. So I think Malaysians should also upgrade their knowledge, check facts, understand, talk to people who know it, know the situation before we make judgments. How are we going to expand the humanitarian landscape also includes individuals out there who may not be directly involved in the humanitarian work, but understand and know enough to actually then, make conclusions based on facts and not just what you hear from somebody else and make it viral and everybody gets impacted. And it's so negative, right? It's so negative and we can't move forward because all these things are flying about. It's difficult.
Can I jump in as well really quickly? Yeah, my pet peeve, which I'd like to share with everyone, is that we don't do charity, okay? I hate that word. None of us here do charity. We are working within the community. We're nonprofit, we're not for profit, we do community. Call us CSOs, call us whatever, but do not call us charity organizations. None of us here do charity or charity work. Charity work is giving that 1 ringgit to the person on the street asking for money. It's very touch point, it's very short term, and it's really about making you feel better, not about really impacting and helping the community. So we don't do charity. I don't do charity. None of us here do charity. And charity is not about addressing the needs and rights of the communities that you work with. Not at all.
Yep, there you go. I think the much better word would be social movements, or mobilized, because actually a much better word is the fact that we are all mobilizers, because we mobilize the whole community and the whole nation. I think that's more important. I just actually wanted to make a quick note when Puan Shireen mentioned to not viral things and actually read up. My mother used to remind me whenever you read something that is controversial on the news to pause, think, and research. Pause, not to like, okay, let me just type that out and see what I've got to say. Pause, think, and research about the issue at hand, and then make a conclusion or solidify your opinion. I think that's really, really important. We live in an instant gratification world, and internet is such a whole thing. Hence why we are all very hasty, I think. Let's move on to the next part of the discussion. I think this is more interesting because we've talked about the problems, we've talked about the challenges. I was thinking, let's move on, because I think it's important for us to talk about what's next, as I mentioned earlier. And I think one of the things that we can move forward with, or one of the things that we can change in order to make sure that we can harmonize assistance and harmonize the work that everyone is doing, is to actually come together as one, as opposed to working in silos. So I guess the next question that I've got, and this is open to all panelists, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. Do you think there is a lack of coordinated approach amongst the key players of the humanitarian sector, meaning NGOs, nonprofit, social enterprises like me, myself? And is this limiting the progress in achieving the objectives? And if so, if there is indeed a lack of coordinated approach, how can we ensure that we move forward to make sure that we are more coordinated, there's synergy, and we all work together and harmonize that mobilization of community development and systems? Open to anybody. Everybody's an expert in this area, so.
Can I jump in first?
Go for it.
I've got a quote, and this is about sums up this point of view. Humanitarianism consists in never sacrificing a human being to a purpose. And the issue is that most of the big players have a purpose that I think needs to be more well defined. And it's really not about funding. That's one of the big ones. I just think, we all jostle for a position, to be the experts, to get more money, for whatever reason that we have our agenda, whether it's in line with, the national policy, etc., which is, yes, you have to do it because you need to work. But I just think we need to remember who's most important. And the most important is not us. The most important is that community. So if whatever it is, that the community needs, that's what has to be the priority first. It's not about our personal or our organizational needs, nor is it about funding. And I think if we do that, if we share, like really share, and not about just promoting ourselves, our organization, or our cause because we are the experts, then we'll do a lot better than what we're doing now. That issue is that sharing of resources, sharing of information, and that need to always say, I am the expert and I am the best. None of us here are the best, and we are experienced, but we're not the experts.
Super,
Yeah,
super,
so
super, Tini.
I'm glad Tini started off with that in terms of, so for everything that we do, that has to be our northern light, right? Beacon ultimately is for the beneficiaries, it's not about us. But at the same time, you do need to have a framework. So we've done a few collaborations actually. So just very quickly among the GLC, even Shari knows this because she was with Khazanah before. So we've worked together with all the GLC companies since 2014. But as we moved as well, we did it. There was some documents to guide us. And it's not actually a registered coalition. It's actually a loose coalition for GLCs to join if they want to. But last year, because suddenly the scale of what became so big, like huge, then we had to actually document what is actually the reason that we are coming together. So we developed what you call terms of reference, where everybody agreed this is what your contribution is going to be. So you cannot. That's one. And secondly, also, Tini is right. You have to put aside your ego, and that's why I think what Hafiz was talking about. What is the principle of working together? Is that those four things? It's about humanity, impartiality, independence, and what was the other one? The other one that's very important. So if you stay true to
Neutrality.
that, then you know here that you need to collaborate. Neutrality as well. You must be neutral. That means you cannot go into a lot of this coordination will start saying, alamak, government's fault, this fault, everybody's fault, and focuses on the problems, but not on the structure on working together. So we've done a few. I mean, we can have a separate, we've had actually a few separate discussions about this, on how do you bring people together. And one of them, and the other thing is you can never get 100% consensus. So you work with those who are on board and you just go. And you find that after you go and you get it right and you do it well, other people will join in. So don't expect a perfect picture. Sometimes, those of us who work in the sector, we're very idealistic, right? Because that's why we're here. We we want to live in a utopian world, but it doesn't work. So just go and you'll come together, but start small. So yeah. That's some of my input. Yeah.
Thank you, Puan Anita. Perhaps Encik Hafiz can maybe unravel how Mercy has worked alongside, multiple community partners and implementer partners.
Yeah, but allow me, before I answer to that question, you mentioned that we are the mobilizers and game changers and so on. Yeah, that's true. But I think all of us here, we owe it to the community, the people who are at risk, the people who suffers. Yeah, because they are the one that mobilizes us to at least start thinking, having this conversation, and to start planning and looking for solutions. So yeah, that's a preamble. On working together on my reflection on your question. Again, before I go straight into what Mercy Malaysia, learning from Mercy Malaysia's experience, I would like to take it to the broader lens, of the global humanitarian policy, where there is a near, what do you call this, universal conviction that we should join together different strategic goals, diverse fields of practice, etc., as much as possible. Because this is very logical, the situation of hunger, conflict, food insecurity, the need to have peace, resilience, they are all already linked. They determine one another and therefore need to be addressed together. That's logical. So this divide between those working in the humanitarian sector, whether they want to address themselves as charitable organization or social impact organization, whatever, those working on that side of the humanitarian sector and the other side working solely on the development side, there has been this divide for so long, which luckily is being addressed and now is merging together. At least we are doing that together with Sejahtera, together with many other organizations. Yeah, but formally, officially this starts in 2016. 2016 during the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul, where this concept of a new way of working that transcend the humanitarian and development divide was committed by the UN people lah, talk lah kan. But we were there and we listened, and of course we take the good thing back in spirit. Yeah. So since then, the concept of the triple nexus, the nexus between humanitarian, development, and when appropriate, elements of peace, has been considered in this context of humanitarian reform. Maybe it is something new, but ada reform juga tau, bukan political reform saja. There's also humanitarian reform. So overloading the plate of humanitarian sector due to the mounting needs will drive us crazy. Sebab tu kita tengok Dr. Tini, dia selalu stress. Her plate is so full. Yeah. The changing geopolitical landscape, politicization of humanitarian action, berlaku sekarang banyak kan, has led to the erosion of humanitarian principles and how the sector operates. So inilah yang kita panggil the triple nexus or the quadruple nexus, the humanitarian, development, peace building, sustainability, all come together. So mungkin that's the way forward lah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Hafiz, that was actually an eye-opener for me as well. I'm actually still digesting it. Juan, did you want to add something?
No, I think it's good that all of us have got our priorities and things that we feel very strongly about. And I echo Hafiz saying that we need to have a framework. Then the way forward is actually to have the framework and bring people together that's aligned to the services that we want to deliver, but follow this framework so that it's coordinated. It is structured. It's a way that we can then show outcomes. Otherwise, we keep going into the cycle of emergency sort of delivery of services. And then we don't have a way forward on how we're going to do it when we recover, the recovery phase, the building resilience and sustainability phase and all that kind. So different actors who have different expertise or experiences, as Hartini says, we're not all experts, but we have experience, need to come together and say, guys, this is the framework. This is where you're going to do what you need to do because it's needed now. This is an action plan for the rest of us, because then we plan and then we move forward. It needs to be a concerted effort in that way, but we need to have a framework that everybody agrees and we move forward. Otherwise, everybody is moving forward in their own way. Yeah. We're not going to get a very holistic solution at the end of it.
Yeah, that's a perfect one. Framework. I think that's really, really important. I think that also comes under the last part of our discussion today, actually. What are the things that perhaps we can change in order to grow our humanitarian sector, to amplify the impact that we are all creating in terms of community development, in terms of youth development, and so on and so forth. And I think having that framework is really, really vital. Well, I say it's 12:30, so I think we're just going to do one more round of consolidation of our thoughts today. But I wanted to also highlight this comment that's in the chat box that was made by Ms. Adriana Abu. And basically the gist of it is the importance to ensure that the education system in our country and abroad, I believe, to ensure that the majority of the youths and the students are able to be the best they can be and be independent, so that we can break that culture of I inherit my family's poverty, I inherit my family's illiteracy, and so on and so forth. So on that note, when we talk about humanitarian work and sort of just going back to what we discussed earlier about the sustainability part, perhaps the panelists can shed some light about the views that they have in terms of building a more sustainable humanitarian ecosystem to ensure that we meet the immediate demands of the community, as well as meeting the demands of the beneficiaries even before they know it, meaning thinking ahead and thinking about the livelihood. What are perhaps some of the call to action that all of you think that is needed in order for us to materialize the dream and goal to ensure that everything that we discussed today, framework, back to basics, working together, all of these things that we talk about can actually be turned into actions? Because I believe we live in times where hope is desperately needed. So yes. Perhaps we can start with Dr. Tini. Her microphone is already unmuted. So.
Well, I think there's a couple of things I'm thinking on the top of my head, only because I'm actually presenting to the council next week on food, emergency food relief and food security, right? And so there is a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, although the focus is on phase 1, which is emergency food relief. But we need to know that exactly as Anita says, there has to be an exit plan. And the exit plan has to be about accountability. It has to be about moving away from the same old, and moving into something where there is independence and resilience, I think, for a lot of the communities. Especially now when we talk about food security and things. So yeah, so with all this, with this plan in mind, whether you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 itself, we're looking at short-term goals and transitioning into your phase 2 and phase 3. You need to look at 4 things, and the 4 things are the PMER: the planning, monitoring, evaluations, and your results and accountability of any project, of any program, right? You don't have a plan and you go in just reacting to the situation. Oh my God, everybody's hungry. And that's all you do. That's all you're going to do for the next 18 months, which God forbid, no, we have to stop. At some point, money's going to run out if you only think of reacting to the situation of feeding people. So yeah, so planning needs to go into that. You need to think of how we're going to involve and sustain and retain all the stakeholders. How are you going to keep them there so that they don't go off and do something else? So that is the monitoring, the documentation, the acknowledgement, the accountability, the pictures, the social media, all of that, right? Because people love stories. Malaysians love stories. Everybody loves stories. So we need to tell good stories of hope and stuff to keep everybody going. In terms of evaluation, assessment, etc., yeah, the reporting and all has to come into place. We got to look at different ways of sort of innovating and recording and reporting the work that we're doing, and how do you measure, and how do you change impact? The issue with a lot of the things that we've been working on is that we're doing the same old, and then we expect different results. So we need to shake that magic bottle with the genie inside, and the genie has to come from the community. It's not us anymore. We can give them the tools, as Anita said, and Shireen says, and everybody's saying, but they need to figure it out. Because when the next disaster strikes, which is very probable, they're ready. They're ready. And so we need to look at all these things. And again, just understand that we are the stakeholders, maybe the convening body, but we're just one of many, many stakeholders who are addressing the issue, that we're all in it together. No one is the expert. Maybe some have more experience, some are older, some are not, just spending more time, but that everybody has something of importance to say, and that we should listen and not be so dismissive and not think that we are the only ones who know the only way. And we need to check our egos at the door. I think some of the biggest egotistical people are people in the humanitarian space. They think they know best. And I'm sorry, you don't. And neither do I, neither does everybody. So please, I think humility is important, and that knowing that we don't know everything is very important. And if we do that and we share, we'll be okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tini. Shall I get one, Shireen?
Thank you. I just want to react to Tini about the egos in the room. There are also other bigger egos outside of the humanitarian sector. Needs to be said. Right? Yeah, because all the other stakeholders need to play the same game and really achieve the same goal, but we're not. So, what we've been saying earlier, those who are ready, a collection of NGOs or non-profits, individuals who are aligned and see that, the way forward is for us to coordinate. That's where we will start, and that's where we will go. That was where we will continue. And as we go along, people will come on board. and people who are not really quite there for the right purpose will fall off. You will see this, and you know it has happened in most of our work. So you're right, put the beneficiaries at the center of our planning and our thinking and our solutioning. It's not about us, it's about them. And really put yourselves in the shoes of how they live every day. I think Tini is very close to that, given that she has direct contact with the people. So we tap on various views and comments and inputs, and then really come together and do something meaningful. But if we can't come together, all of us, then it's not something that you say, okay, hang it, I'm going to give up. We find other people who do want to come together, and then we just get on with it. So we're ready. We're open to collaborate with anybody in this room, outside this room, whoever that feels very strongly about this, and looking at it in a very systematic way, looking at it in a very measured way, so that then we have a plan to work on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Puan. And Hafiz, perhaps we can go to you.
Thank you, Puan Rauda. I don't have any answers lah macam biasa kan, but I think from my observation, most organizations tend to be very good at reactive decision making, and that includes Muslim Malaysia as well. Working out responses that adapt to any crisis after they have occurred. Sebelum tu, preparedness kurang. And this is also the same with government at all levels, from federal, from the state to the local district level. And this has earned some NGOs, some organizations, even the government, and their supporting agencies, a reputation, or in some circles, of being very flexible, meaning that there's improvement, or being very flexible and responsive to dynamic situations, meaning to emergency situations. But we need to be fair and to acknowledge dan mengaku that we are not as good at proactive decision making. Not as good at projecting ahead to identify potential scenarios and future adjustments to adapt to emergencies, crisis, disasters. Proactive decision making, I think this is very important for strategic adaptations, which will reflect a deeper level of learning about an intervention and the availability of resources, of expertise, in making significant course corrections or changes. So saya rasa a shift, particularly in enhancing community-based leadership, penting lah. Good governance. It's not about the government, it's about good governance at all level. Apa lagi? The integration of local knowledge. Knowledge, macam Tini cakap, mungkin we got some experience and we have some knowledge, bits and pieces there. But in the integration of local knowledge, empowerment and ownership of humanitarian and development programs are the way forward in expanding the humanitarian landscape. Kalau kita nak be resilient, sustainable, and also kalau kita nak stay relevant lah. If not, we will be irrelevant. Yeah, itu sahaja.
Yeah, super. Thank you so much, Hafiz. Shall we go to Puan Anita?
There's 3 hard acts to follow up, but yeah, I think I'll take it from a more personal side, because everybody says talk about institutions, so it's about the self as well, right? So number 1 is, in order for you to keep up and not go into that rabbit hole of negativity, which I think we tend to do, then you've got to learn. So when you learn more, so I implore you that you read and constantly learn about whatever it is that you're trying to do. So some people tend to want to switch too much. I've done that to some perspective, but whatever that you decided to take on, learn about it. And there are many platforms now. Actually, there are a lot of free courses as well. Because when you learn, then you get ideas as well. Because sometimes nations, we are very very inward, but actually out there's a lot of experience. So as an organization, encourage that learning. I know, and it's not about funding actually, because there are a lot of free courses. It's about making sure that that's part of your process. Secondly is yeah, just to emphasize, listen and don't judge. I think we've become a very judging society. And when you want to air your problems, and these are the newer generation, don't do it in public. There's no need for it. What are you trying to achieve out of that, right? So, and you find that when you don't do it in public and you do it in private, and you also build trust. So there's a trust deficit in this country between us and governments for different people, but not everybody's bad. There are still many champions, and I will stand by that. There are some days I don't feel good, but there are many champions. Some of the champions are attending this, but it's actually way beyond. And sometimes you got to take the opportunity of that champion at that moment, you know, and look at that. And that's why if your beacon is correct, right? It's always about the beneficiaries. All this will be your guiding light. Actually, you need to have certain guiding things that guide you as a principal, what you do, your organization as a person, and also how you approach yourself in the country as well. Sometimes nations get so caught up with this negativity, and then actually no. So that's why the pausing is important. Even as organizations, sometimes you have to sit back and say, like, okay, we're not going to just we need to take time with our strategy. As an individual, you need to take time. Okay, what is it I'm doing? Why am I so angry all the time? What is going right? What is going wrong? There's many things going right. It's bad, yeah. But honestly, and then that's why you must take the opportunity to learn from other lessons. So you don't waste time going to this rabbit hole, because there are solutions, and find people that you do. And then lastly, that I have to say, because I've been doing this, and I think some of you have been doing this, for those of us who are more experienced, we must mentor younger people. When I was growing up in this sector, I realized that I didn't have any mentors, not official mentors. But we need to do that, because and seek out people that you can talk to, that you trust, that you can learn from, because maybe you have no time to do it online. But I do a lot of informal mentorship, actually. And we brainstorm the individuals who reach out, you know, because a lot of people need guidance and they get lost. You just get lost in all these problems and all that. So you need somebody who you can trust, who you admire, or who you think, you know, there's something about that person you want to learn, and talk to that person. And there are many, and make that concept of effort to do that. So yeah, that's just my last day. There's hope. There's always hope.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Puan Anita. I'm going to do a roundup of conclusion later, but for now, I thought of actually opening up the floor for questions. I believe Pao has opened up the microphones for everyone in. Yeah, we've got 57 participants in. So anybody who's got any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask the panelists here. This is your time. Anyone, or actually to break the awkward silence, because I know, you know, the first person to unmute is always the hardest. There is actually a question earlier today about assistance that are non-financial. So essentially non-financial assistance. And I think what she meant was perhaps programs and upskillings. And the question was, how exactly can you execute those non-financial assistance, and how can you implement them alongside the financial assistance? Perhaps this question can be answered by Puan Shireen or Puan Anita. Oh,
Puan, go first, Anita or me. Anita can take this on, Anita.
So what was it again? I'll be honest.
Don't worry. So
monkey personality.
Don't worry. One of the attendees actually asked about a non-financial assistance. I think what she meant is, you know, programs, upskilling, or, you know, or mentoring, perhaps, as you mentioned, and how can they actually implement this non-financial assistance alongside the financial assistance, especially now everyone's just looking for financial assistance.
Right. I mean, it depends. If you're with an organization, there are many ways to influence your organization to do that. So it's about prioritizing your time, right? What is that you want to do? But know that when you do the non-financial part, especially capacity building, then you're investing in a much longer term sort of response. So it's investing in your own team as well. To, you know, if you're a leader, you have to lead the way. If you're not within your organization, you have to embed it in the organization. So there are many ways of doing that, doing even mini talks. As an individual, you know, then you just in terms of assistance, I mean, like I said, I don't volunteer my time fully, but I volunteer my time to mentor a few people, whether or not, you know, and chat about them. And sometimes they're asking for a career advice. So it's actually about your time. It can be anything from material and non-material, right? So material can be either money or whatever you have in your home. So even and don't underestimate the small gestures that you make. So I had a lot of durian given to me. I just gave some to my Nepalese guide. I didn't even realize that that's even something, right? And it brightened their day. So the bigger thing within the organization that you can play and you can influence as well. So part of, if you find that you're in an organization that you have little influence, that's not true. You just have to be very persistent and patient and find different ways of doing it. And if it's not the organization for you, then you move on. If you're within the organization, it's time for you to take up that bigger step and lead the way. I think a lot of us, I think to change the narrative on how, we don't praise each other enough. There's always something, again, I go to negativity, right? You got to tell people you're on the right path, but maybe you need to tweak this and tweak that. And that will open up. So it's even kind words also, in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, super. Thank you, Puan Anita. Yeah, being kind actually is actually also a non-financial assistance. And I think that is definitely required and needed, desperately needed in times like this. I see Mr. Nazaruddin, you unmuted yourself. Have you got a question for the panelists? Feel free to just, talk. We can't hear you, so I'm not sure whether you're speaking but you did unmute yourself. So can anyone hear, or is it just me? No, okay, that's fine. I think I can move to Ms. Shahnaz. I think, yes, she raised her hands. Feel free to unmute yourself. Floor is yours.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. Go ahead.
I hope it's a simple question. I hear about wanting to develop a framework. So if you want to develop a framework, what does the panelists think the first step should be?
Good question. Framework. What is the first step to building that framework so we can all move forward? I can pass the floor to actually Puan Shireen, because she was the one who actually proposed that. Puan?
I would start with mapping out all the different actors who want to be part of this and looking at what sort of resources they can bring to the table, not just money, and then, map it out also to the kind of assistance we think we can give. And then the kind of information like what Hafiz says, to integrate all the knowledge that we have of the groups or the communities that we want to support. And then from having that information, and then don't take too long to do that. From that information, then the framework actually will come together. Some will do health, some will do food security, some will do livelihood and all that. And then you actually have this sort of picture of how the different parts can come together. And then after that, do an execution plan that everybody can then subscribe to. And have a mechanism where we report our sort of work to each other, and open up the kind of needs that other grouping may be able to support. So the framework has got to come from the different actors, and then we craft it. But you would know that there will be different parts that people want to do, but how do we coordinate it is also something that you need to put into that framework, and the reporting and the measuring needs to happen as well. Then we're transparent with sharing all our knowledge and our work with each other.
Thank you, Puan. I have a follow-up question, actually, if you don't mind. Who should be leading this framework building?
I don't think there is one who could lead. I think it's a collaboration of, the concept of all leaders coming together, and even those who really don't agree also come together and find that commonality. Sometimes in the humanitarian work, and let's be honest, Anita will know this, and Hartini, of course, lives it every day. There's no one leader. If there's one leader, then all the other humanitarian actors say, okay, I'm not so aligned with that personality, therefore I'm not going to get in there. So we need to find a way where, everybody is a leader, and we respect the kind of things that they bring together. But really, it's the kind of work that you want to achieve together. Somebody can be the leader to call the shots, to say, okay, let's do it this way, and sort of work around the execution. But it's the best amongst the peers that needs to come together.
Yeah, I think, just get it started, just do it. And it must be built around the issue, right? Then you have to comment the problem.
So
children's group have got a collision. I mean, it had a difficult moment of getting off, but at least there's some now, but it's on a common issue. Then under common issue, there's the broad thing. Then you've got to really go down on to split it up. What is it? You can't do everything, basically. Yeah. So, yeah,
thank you, Puan Shireen and Anita. We've got a question in the chat box, actually. What is your thought on having a data lake where NGOs share their target audience and help okay, yeah, but basically where NGOs share their target audience, so sort of helping another so they can have better synergy to avoid imbalance of recipients. I think I understand the question from Encik Mahmoud. Let's say we were to deploy assistance in Kampung A from NGO A. You know, I think that there needs to be a sharing of information between NGOs, so then not all help goes to Kampung A and it also goes to Kampung B, C, and D. And so what is the thought on having data lake? Anyone from the panel? Puan Anita, I think you unmuted yourself and you're smiling there.
Can I just jump in before I forget that point?
Yes.
It's actually trust building. Anita is right. Commonality, talk about the issues, but really actually build trust amongst all the actors. Sometimes that is not available. So when you don't have trust, it's very difficult for you to share. So, you know, when the issue is very clear and that's what you want to respond to, then you will share, because there's trust around how we're going to help this situation. Anita?
Yeah, so with data, oh my God, that's another big topic. But look, yeah, we are lacking a lot of data, so let's not even get obsessed by that. So what we're trying to do actually is to develop the capacity of the community to provide us that data. Actually, it should come from them. So there are many models globally where that happens. So let them, because they know each other best, right? So that's one level. Another level is start small. So if you're talking about, you know, like a PPR or a kampung, right? Actually, they know, but maybe somebody's not helping them document it. Then you need to empower those community leaders to be able to do some kind of mapping, as well as to do their own data, so they can actually tell you truthfully and based on information that they have, not just verbally, that this is what they need, this is what they do, and all that. So we are not doing enough building capacity of communities to do their own mapping, their own participatory, and there's a lot of approaches that you get them involved. There are actually a lot of ways to do that, get them involved, and then along the way you have to build trust, not only between yourselves and them as an outsider, but also amongst themselves. And number three, which I don't see in this country as well, is that because there's a lack of community leaders, actually you should build their capacity to be able to lead themselves, but of course building capacity on what is governance, what is neutrality, what is accountability. So that those standards and collecting of data should, I mean, I'm a strong believer in that it should come ground up. And then you get the next level, actually the next level, then you have to see the hierarchy of the information that you're trying to get to, right? So first community, after that, who's in charge of the community at large, and then it ought to be, of course, there are many challenges, municipality and so on and so forth. So you have to go by stage. But as NGOs, I think don't spread yourself too thin. Once you're in a community, like what we do is that once we're in a community, we are there for years. And then we start getting more and more information, because information and data doesn't come overnight as well, because there's a lack of trust. Sometimes the information that you're seeking is not the information that you thought you wanted or needed, and therefore you cannot do the assessment properly because people are spending too short a time on that.
Can I just add, since we're quoting and we have very lovely quotes, somebody very, very thoughtful shared this with me. Don't let perfection be the don't let perfection states be in the way of good. So if it's good enough, carry on, because we wait until everything is perfect, and then half of the things have all gone south. So don't let perfection be the stumbling block for you to do good. I'm paraphrasing. There must be a better way to say it, but you get the drift. The drift.
We did, Puan Shireen. Thank you so very much. All right then, it's almost 1 p.m. It's solid 2 hours, as Pao said to me. It's solid 2 hours, so perfect. I'm just going to do a quick roundup, and then I'm going to pass it back to the host for today. So it was a really meaningful conversation. I personally, as a moderator, learned a lot and I reflected a lot. So maybe just a breeze through of what was discussed today. In terms of reliefs, assistance, and aid, it is important for us to listen to what exactly is needed by the community and the beneficiaries. As impact builders, as change makers, as mobilizers and all sorts, it's very, very important for us to stop, pause, and actually listen. What we think is good for them might not actually be, because we are actually not in their position. Second, negative connotation. It is very important for us to fight for the rights of social workers, NGOs getting paid, SCOs and all those sorts, because we too are human beings and there's actually a profession behind it. There are actual people who implement, there are actual people who drives this community development and community building work. And we also talked about marginalized communities. At the end of the day, it's not just about Malaysian or non-Malaysian, it is about being one, because at the end of the day, it's humanity first always. If we do wish to end COVID-19, which I believe everybody here wishes to end as quickly as possible, it is important for us to look at people as people and not people as based on their citizenship, race, religion, or really any background. In terms of growing the humanitarian sector, which is something that we discussed really, really heavily, I'm going to summarize it in 3 points. Number one, it's important to go back to basics. Again, humility is really, really vital. We don't know everything, and we will never ever know everything, because at the end of the day, we are all humans and we are imperfect. It's really, really important to work together and not work in silos anymore, because it does not work. Framework is really important, and trust building is also very important. And the only way to go is, again, for us to just start and not focus on being perfect, as Puan Shireen just mentioned. And again, attitude is really, really important, especially when we work in the humanitarian sector. Always check on your ego, always do self-reflection. And for that, I actually would like to end with what my grandfather reminded me 2 years ago. He asked me which one of these values is most important, intelligence, hard work, or attitude. And he said it's attitude. Proper and commendable attitude is the most important element in whatever you are doing, especially in the humanitarian sector. And for that, we shall end with Sejahtera's quote, "We are Malaysian and we have the capacity to love and to care for everyone." Thank you so much, everyone. I'll meet you guys in 2 weeks. Back to you, Pao.
Thank you, Rauda. Thank you. That was a very good roundup by you. And yeah, what an insightful and very deep discussion by the panel members. I've certainly, for one, learned a lot today. Again, I would like to give a round of shout outs to our great panel members, Datuk Dr. Hatini Zainuddin, thank you so much. Cik Anita Ahmad, thank you so much. And Cik Hafiz Amirul, thank you so much. And not to forget, Puan Shireen, thank you so much. All right, so before we end this session, I would like to do another reminder for our next or upcoming series of webinars. Haris, could you put up the schedule again, please? While Haris is putting up the schedule, just gonna read through the chat section. I really enjoyed the discussion, lots of insight. I agree, Shoba, Aya. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. All right, so as I mentioned before, our next webinar will be on the 28th of August, also a Saturday morning, where it'll be a Merdeka special, and we'll touch on youth empowerment in nation building and eradication of poverty. I think Cik Anita mentioned in the panel discussion that we need more young people in this space. So perhaps that will be the perfect platform or avenue to discuss how we can empower and how we can involve more young people in the humanitarian sector. And why not involve young people when we have great mentors such as Datuk Tini, Anita, and Hafiz, and even Rauda herself. So, right. So, and after the 20th of August, we're going to have 3 more webinar series on the 18th September, 25th September, and 2nd October before we head on to our big event, Big Do, in 15 October of International Day of Eradication of Poverty. Please tune in to our Facebook page and our website, Yayasan Sejahtera. You can't miss it. Just type in Yayasan Sejahtera, you'll find it to get more up-to-dates and more updates on our activities. So with that, maybe we'll do a round of photo shoot. If everyone who's willing to turn on their cameras, I'll do a quick screen grab. Cameras. Tak ada. Alamak, semua orang malu lah. All right, never mind. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, one more.
What?
That's my son.
Our young Yayasan Sejahtera CEO.
Yeah. Yeah, who's volunteering at the moment for free. Don't forget to pay him. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right.
Oh, there he is.
There he
Oh my
is.
God.
Yeah.
Hello, you. Hello, you.
All right, always like to enter frame. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you, everyone.
nicely at 1 p.m.
Thank you, Tini.
Yep.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
everyone.
Rauda. Thank you,
Thank
Hafiz,
you.
Anita.
Have a great weekend. Have a great rest and order a great lunch.
Stay safe, everybody. Thank
Stay
you.
safe, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Puan, Shireen,
Thank you.
Hafiz, Anita,
Yeah.
Pao. Thank you. I'll meet you guys again in 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Sejahtera team, you want to stay on for a couple of minutes?
Boleh.
Not bad. I think we got quite a good crowd, huh? Well done,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, at one point it was like 70 plus, I think.
It was. Yeah. And
Alhamdulillah.
people were engaged throughout.
Yep.
73 Puan.
Wow. Well done.
Yeah. All right. So next one, Merdeka Special content dah ready. We just need
Siapa
to.
kita nak invite?
Okay. Kejap eh.
Who are the young influencers we can bring into the platform?
So in the lineup, we have Pandelela Rinong, the director.
No. Really? We can get her on?
Trying to.
Ah.
Through my contact.
Ooh.
Pocket Rocket Man, Pau.
Pocket Rocket Man maybe. Datuk Azizul Hasni, insyaAllah.
Tapi dia tak muda.
Dia tak muda? Dia muda.
Yang
muda.
in heart Puan, yang in heart.
Ya ke? How old
Dia,
is he?
dia my age.
Oh, tak muda lah tu.
Okay lah.
Okay.
Samuel,
Charis.
Samuel Azaya,
Siapa tu?
the teacher yang dekat
Oh,
Sam-
Samuel. Okay.
Saya, yeah.
And then Rauda will help us connect to Deborah Henry from Fuji School.
Not so young.
Not
And
so young.
she's- Yeah, dia dah cakap banyak dah. Tak mau. I nak fresh face.